Good morning, guys. Today I thought we would go through a video of the Notion system. I actually tried to record this once already, and for the first time ever, it just got way too kind of complicated. So I've decided I'm going to break this down into a series, into kind of step-by-step, shorter form videos, just so that it's much more digestible for you, basically. Like, honestly, I tried it this morning. I was talking about an hour straight, and even I was getting lost. Because the system is pretty complex. But anyway, so I'm recording this now, and I've been getting requests to do this. Personally, I think implementing a system such as this in your life is the biggest, I don't really like to use the term life hack, but like the biggest life hack, so to speak. It just makes things like 100,000 times easier. And yeah, I literally can't recommend it enough, which is why you hear me mention it so much throughout my videos. Like, my entire life is literally, and I mean literally, built on top of this system. So for management of like your personal life, I do believe that Notion is the #1 tool for this job. If you're doing projects that are based on teams, Notion, I don't believe, is the right tool, and I think you want to start to look at things such as like ClickUp. I've tried everything, and I will say, like, Notion isn't the best at almost anything, in fact, but it's the best at bringing kind of all these things together. So if you don't know what Notion is, it's kind of like, you can literally just build custom workspaces with something like Google Docs meets Airtable meets like your internal company workspace management stuff. You can embed videos, you can embed charts, you can embed any of like the things that you work with inside these different pages. It's just a kind of fantastic all-round tool for management of your life, in my opinion. The other thing to mention is this system isn't going to change your life. That still kind of comes down to you. What this does is it implements structure, and it kind of gives you a real understanding of your life and pushes you in. It tells you what to do to go in the direction that you want to go into, and you'll understand what I mean by that very, very shortly. So the point of failure in this system is still myself as a human. The system can very easily churn out the tasks that I should be doing in order to achieve my goals, but it's still down to me to do them. So the system isn't going to change your life. You still have to do it, but the system lays out a plan of what you need to do to get where you want to be. And of course, look, I'm only human. There are times that I veer off from the system. Previously, for like 6 months, I was off the system, mostly through like I wouldn't say laziness. Like, I'm not lazy, but I just kind of fell out of it. And it's the same as like if you're on a diet or something or whatever it is. Like, if you're on trying to stick to a very strict diet, and then one evening you eat like a cake or something, the most important thing, in my opinion, is to accept that you have fallen off from the diet, analyze how you fell off from it, and just move on and get back onto the diet as fast as possible. If you let like one slip up kind of throw you off for weeks or days or months, even in my case, that is when it really becomes a problem. But the one thing to accept is that like we're all human, and there will be times when like you miss a daily checkup or like whatever it is. It's okay as long as you get back onto the system as fast as possible. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up. So I'm going to structure this. It's going to be kind of like a video series. Like, it's the first time I've ever done a video series, in fact. But yeah, just to break it down into smaller steps. So this is the introduction. I'm going to give you an overview of the entire system. This is kind of how all the different, like, here's an example of like a Notion page, where like, just so that you can kind of cross-reference, this is like my command center, and then I have like my alignment zone. I have my like daily tracking. Here's an example of like I'm offline. Anyway, like, this is an example of how it actually looks when it comes together. But as you can see, there's a lot of different pages. All of these have sub pages and kind of sub databases. So what I'm going to do is start off by an overview of the system, how everything works, to outline all of the different pages that exist within the system, how they communicate with each other, how I interact with them, and how they're used. to basically give a good overview, and then in this video I'm going to put links through into all of the kind of sub videos showing you how you can use such a system in your life. I guess a good place to start off with will be in this section, which is identity sculpting. By the way, this Notion system that is here was originally built off of August Bradley's PPV template, Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults. I would say that I have now kind of adapted it so much that, not that I would claim it as my own, like it's definitely his original foundation, but his foundation was also kind of based off of getting things done and having a second brain. So he kind of translated those ideas into a Notion system and built on top of it. And I have now been working on this for 2.5 years and added like my own touches and changes as well. But you'll see like the top three, if anyone recognizes this, Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults, it's all based off of August Bradley's original template. So to start off with, we can look at life pillars. Life pillars are what are important to you in your life. For most people, it's going to be money, freedom, health, family. I don't mean to give you the answers, but for most people, that is what will apply. Maybe some more than others, but generally they are like most people's kind of four key pillars in their life, at least that they are mine. So it's about establishing those four pillars, writing down what do those pillars mean to you, and kind of establishing like life goals around what does that idea pillar of your life look like. What does the money pillar in my life, what is my ideal situation there? What is my dream financial situation? And I wrote this out about 2.5 years ago and have fast surpassed what I've written down as my original goals, at least on like the financial aspect and on the freedom aspect, on the relationship and health aspect. I'm still working on cracking that one, but yeah. And so it's just about establishing here what are like the key pillars of your life and how would you like those to look, mapping out what is your actual ideal situation. And most people, this is where we start off with on this system. A lot of people in their life have no idea what they actually want out of life and what they want to achieve. They just kind of let life happen to them. And this is the complete opposite. This whole system is about taking control of your life, figuring out what it is that you want and implementing that. I'm starting to sound like I'm selling you something. I'm really not. This is all completely free. So understanding map out those key areas of your life and how you really want them to look. If you haven't got the best relationships, what does it look like for you to have dream relationships? If you had for example, location freedom is also one of mine. Where would I go to? Where do I want to travel to? How would my life actually look if I had complete location freedom? And so that also kind of falls into the aspect of who do you want to become? Because the one thing that I can guarantee you is if you're mapping out where it is that you want to be, you're not going to be there remaining like the same person by having the same habits, the same financial habits, the same routines, managing your life in the same way. If you want to change your life, you kind of have to change who you are. The skills that you have, how you approach work, the projects that you work on, what you invest time in, it all needs to adapt. Like if you kind of analyze a millionaire's life, it's going to be very different from your average person's life. Or if you analyze myself, for example, like at the moment we're doing about 200 to 250k per month. I don't watch any Netflix. I don't waste time on anything. I literally spend my whole life working. And I'm not saying that's the right answer, by the way. That is the right answer for me because that is one of my goals. Maybe some people would prefer a much more relaxed life with a much lower level of financial income, and that's completely fine. There's no right or wrong answers in this. You don't share this with anyone. It's going to be very, very intimate details about your personal life and what it is that you really want out of life. So yeah, who is it that you want to become? So like kind of map that out. What is like your kind of dream, what is your dream life? Who do you really want to be? Which then translates over into life goals. And so now we're starting to actually set out what are your life goals. And so a few years ago, I mapped out that my life goals were to have $100,000 per month in income, to have complete location freedom. At the time of doing this, I was very much tied down to Georgia as a location, so I wanted complete freedom. And I mapped out kind of how that would look, bearing in mind I hadn't left Georgia, the country, for about 2 years. And for me, that looked as changing locations every 3 months, spending my winters in Colombia. I literally wrote out this stuff years ago, and I literally just spent my my winter in Colombia. And so, yeah, building that out, and then we translate that down into baby step goals. So if your goal is, financial freedom, we're not going to break that down into you need to be making $1 million per year. If you're making $2,000 per month at the moment, it's simply too much of a jump. We break it down into baby step goals. The first goal is I need to make $5,000, then 10,000, then 25, then 50, then 100K is the way to kind of tackle that. And then we tackle each problem literally just one step at a time. This is literally, you notice what already we're down to breaking down your life goals, what it is that you really want out of life, who do you want to become, what are those actual goals for you. And sorry, this actually goes over into yearly goals, and we break it down into this is what I'm going to achieve this year. These are my non-negotiable goals this year. That should actually come over here. This is what I mean. My system is so complicated that yeah. So we break it down into what will I achieve this year, because your life goals can maybe be set over the next 5 years or so, whereas we're literally talking about this is happening here and now. We'll bring that up there, and yeah, a little bit messy, but yeah. And so life goals are taken down into I'll do this year, and then baby step goals are going into like step-by-step things. So now we have, let's say, a life goal of I want to make $100,000 per month. Has been broken down into this year. You're starting off with a baby step goal. Let's say right now you're making 2,000. Your next goal is to make 5,000, then 10,000, then 25,000. And we're going to break down into how you actually get there. So baby step goals is then going to flow over into projects. Projects are going to be anything in your life. I define a project as anything in your life that contains like more than 2 tasks, which is taken from David Allen's philosophy in getting things done. It's just simply a way of organizing something. So a project can be a very, very small thing, such as you need to take the car to a garage to get fixed. It has like a couple of different steps in it. First, you need to call a garage, and you need to go and drive the car and drop it off there. And there's actually about 4 or 5 steps to it. So you can make that into a project. Every single project will then contain action items, which are steps to that project that need to get done. So a project could be, we can do a simple example. If you need to fix something in your car, the project is fix the car. Action items are find a place to fix the car, arrange appointment to drop off car, collect car, pay bill, done. Of course, it's a very, very simple example, but going back to our example of like the first baby step goal of 5K per month income, the first project should be something that is income related. So it can be setting up your own business. It could be acquiring a skill that you need in order to, if you haven't got any skills yet, acquiring a high income skill would be a project for you. Go and learn marketing, go and learn copywriting, go and learn design, go and learn programming, whatever it is. You can literally mark that down as a project and add that into your Notion system. And that is assigned to your baby step goal of achieving $5,000 per month. And of course, as we increase the goals, the projects are going to change. And this is actually how I make my decisions on whether I take on a new project, whether I start a new business or not. It still applies to me. Does this fit into my current baby step goals, which are much higher than they previously were? And it just helps you eliminate and make sure that you're really like staying on track and investing time into your projects. So this is where we enter like the pipelines area of the. So we've kind of identified what we want out of life. I redo this every single year, by the way. I'll analyze my previous year and reassess my goals for the upcoming year, and I will re-review this maybe every like 3 months or so. Just skim over my identity sculpting, like the person that I want to be, the person I want to become, and just make sure that what I want is still aligned with what I previously wanted. In most cases it is. You don't really change this too often, perhaps every couple of years. Like you may have some major shifts in the direction that you want to take your life in. This isn't something that I change or review too often. It's like a one-time process, and then the rest of it is building our life around it. And the baby step goals, I go through like every month and every quarter. I go through and check my baby step goals and tick off all the ones that I've achieved. And a baby step goal is literally just a word for like breaking down your yearly goals into smaller tasks so they're more manageable and more achievable, and then they're broken down into projects. So pipelines is anything that requires action or activity from you. So I have projects, and then this is just an example of on some bigger projects that are constantly ongoing for me. So I mentioned a project here is anything like 2 tasks and above, let's say on my YouTube, which is kind of, I have no plans on completing it as a project. It's kind of an incompletable goal, but it's something that requires action and activity from me. YouTube has its own dashboard, which I actually started off on here. I don't know if it will load. Yeah, here it is. This is my YouTube dashboard. This is the idea of my videos that I want to create. This is some notes that I have. And this is like my calendar, which is pretty empty at the moment. This is my repurposing schedule. These are videos I've done. These are videos that are in process. That just gives you an example of how that actually looks. Then I also have a financial planning pipeline, not planning, but kind of financial management pipeline, where every month I will go through that with a personal finance advisor. I go through all of my transactions. I check there's no subscriptions I don't want to be paying. I check what I've spent money on and categorize it. I analyze my employees and how much money I spent on each of them. I analyze my purchases. Did I make money off them? I see where I was happy spending money, see where I'm unhappy spending money. Check on my investments and kind of just make sure that my money is positioned in an optimal way as possible. So that's just an example of any projects that are kind of huge projects or constantly ongoing. I will turn them into like their own dashboard, but technically they still do fall under projects. And a project is always going to have one of 2 things. It is either going to have, you can see this arrow coming down here, it's either going to have a habit assigned to it, or it's going to have an action item assigned to it. An action item is just another word for a task. It is something that needs action from you. A habit is something that is like the same task and is frequently recurring. So rather than me needing to make the same action of each month, I need to talk to my financial planner, I simply just have a habit of monthly, we have a call together. And for example, on YouTube, I don't really do action items. I do a habit of every day currently, I must spend 2 hours on YouTube, either recording content or planning content. So in order for a project to be considered active, it needs to have at least one action item or at least one habit that is active on it and being completed. So we can then come up with the system here. This is an app called Sunsama, which is kind of like a calendar manager / task manager, which does integrate with Notion, that I can sync my habits across to, and I can sync my action items across to then get them into like, this is my day-to-day process of these are the tasks I complete every day. It's got a direct integration into Notion. So anything that's in my Notion system as needs to be done, I can use in Sunsama, and I kind of use that as a task manager. It's just quite lightweight, and I generally prefer working from it than Notion. I did used to work directly from Notion, but since Sunsama released that update, I was really quite happy with it. Then every single day I will complete a daily review. So in the morning, we'll go through that in a separate video. Every single morning I complete a morning review, which is like a 5-minute journal. My daily tracking also has all of my habits stored in it, and it also has all my action items stored in it. So I plan out what I want to do today. And it also contains all of my habits, which is where I complete these are, my habit tracker, which is where I complete these are the habits I completed today. It also contains some interesting automations that I built from Apple Health, where it syncs over my macros. So it syncs over how many calories I ate today, how much fat I ate, how much protein I ate, how much carbs I ate. I use some like smart health trackers for sleep tracking. So it syncs that over into my daily tracking as well. It syncs over my blood pressure, which I do every morning and every evening as well. Daily tracking is then synced over to weekly tracking, and I also do like a daily analysis of disappointments, improvements, and achievements, and tick off all the tasks that I've done. All that data then gets synced up into like my weekly analysis, which can then be from kind of like a higher level. It gives me an overview of everything I did that week, my calorie intake of each day, so I can view it in kind of like a spreadsheet, which is just a much easier way to digest this information. So daily tracking is purely information capture. There's no real analysis going on there. I just very quickly blast through it, input all the data on, this is what I ate today, this is what I achieved today, this is how much money I made, these are like the key metrics. And then every single week, usually on a Friday afternoon, I do a weekly review, which involves analyzing kind of day-to-day this stuff, like the information is fed up into the weekly review, and analyzing how successful was my week, and what are some key improvements that I make. And then I have some weekly habits and routines that I complete up here in order to keep my life and my kind of Notion system in place. Weekly then gets synced up to monthly. So already we've taken the highlights of daily tracking, which are now visible in weekly tracking, and then I take the highlights of my weekly tracking and add that into my monthly tracking. So mostly we're just kind of filtering through data, taking the most important information and passing that up to the next database. The monthly review is in kind of more of like a higher level overview, more like generic questions on, if I look over the past month, if I look over this data that I've collected every day, what can I do to kind of improve my life? And quarterly tracking is kind of similar. On monthly review as well, I also do like a measuring my body parts. It sounds very funny. It's like measuring my waist, my arms, my forearms, my legs, and I pass that back on to there's a Russian scientist that I've been working with that I pass that data back onto to optimize and improve my health. And then in like a quarterly review as well, it's even higher level than that. It's just really planning out what did I achieve last quarter? Were there any big mistakes? Why didn't I achieve what I want? Why did I achieve what I want? And then planning for the next quarter. So it's more planning, whereas the monthly review is really analysis of your days and weeks. And then the other thing that every single quarter I will try to get my blood work done depending where I am in the world. So I'll just measure my testosterone and some other kind of key health indicators. So what I'm trying to do is have like a very, very complex, very detailed blood samples for like the previous 10 years. I started this a couple of years ago. So what I want to have is when I'm like, your blood really tells an interesting story. So when I'm like 50, for example, or 40, I think there are going to be some very, very interesting improvements in healthcare. And I'm kind of betting on the fact that if they have access to very detailed reports of your historical blood work, it makes the job for doctors much, much easier. So I have kind of no requirement for it at the moment. I mean, it's interesting to have an overview of where testosterone and things are at, but it's more really betting on like my kind of future health and the direction of the health industry. Then I do a yearly review, which means to analyze my previous year. And again, this is kind of like very, very high level analysis of what did I achieve, what were the main highlights for me, where was I happiest, what were my main disappointments. And then I also do a plan for the next year, which then gets passed up into yearly goals. And we start this process all over again. That is like my process, and most of the time is really spent out in daily tracking, of course. Like that is where most of my day-to-day time within this Notion system is spent. It's within daily tracking. So then we can come on to the knowledge vault, and I'll actually start this one down from the bottom, in fact. So this is me. These are all of the different systems that integrate with my Notion system. So we have the Apple Watch, which I'm not wearing currently, but that syncs data into my health tracking, and I also have some shortcuts on it. So whenever I have a new idea, whenever a task comes to mind, I can just press a shortcut, I can say it, and it will literally be input into my notes and ideas section. And the same applies on the iPhone. Like I can just open the Notion app, or you can use Notion widgets. Anytime I have an idea, the very important thing, this comes from the concept of building your second brain, is just to offload any information as soon as it comes in, get it into your notes and ideas, just to free up your like attentional space. The other one I have is like the desktop app on Notion. These are basically all the ways I integrate with my Notion system. The other one is Raycast. Raycast is like a shortcut manager, and you can add tasks, you can update things, whatever you want from Notion. Sunsama should be here actually as well, because that is another way I integrate with Notion. I knew that I'd forget something. Yeah, Sunsama is another way that I use to integrate with Notion. Kindle/Readwise. So Kindle, I'm sure all of you know what it is. Readwise is a app that sits on top of that syncs over all of your highlights that you've made whilst reading books and syncs them over to Notion. Apple Notes I don't actually use anymore. I deleted it because this was kind of a wasted process. I had a bad habit of using Apple Notes, when now I just literally put straight into my notes and ideas tab within Notion. And then another one that is really, really interesting is Apple Photos, or the Photos app, which whenever I see something interesting, whatever it is, if I'm scrolling through Instagram, if I'm on YouTube, if I'm reading an interesting article, I have a habit of screenshotting things, and I had about 20,000 screenshots. So I now every single week, as part of my weekly review, I go through those photos and I add them into relevant parts of my Notion system, often into the habits section of Notion, because it will often be like inspirational things or advice or anything that I kind of find interesting. Or if it's something that I need to take action on, maybe it's a holiday destination, it will go into locations, or like whatever it is. So or it can go into subjects and information. So yeah, these are all the ways that I integrate with the Notion system, that information gets put into my Notion. So under the knowledge role, I have subjects and information. These are about 30 subjects I have like a keen interest in, anything from chess to biohacking to learning to all different forms of social media marketing for me are under different categories, to SaaS companies, to programming, to design, to psychology, to operational security, to various other subjects, are all within my like research base, and they all have their own unique workspace of whenever I collect information from books, if I read a podcast, if I listen to a podcast, if I watch a YouTube video and I see some interesting notes, that will get put into my notes, which then integrates with subjects and information. So I can categorize my notes that they fall into a particular category, maybe psychology, and it will automatically appear within this database. I also keep a database, kind of like a library of books to read, which then of course gets digested by Kindle and then gets synced back up into the subjects and information database. I also keep a database on software and resources. So these are going to be things that I stumble across. Maybe it's on Product Hunt, maybe someone recommends me a tool that I'm not ready to quite use yet. Maybe I find an interesting payment gateway, interesting app, interesting piece of software, interesting, like set of icons or website template, it can, or a bank, it can literally be anything that I think is an interesting resource that could be useful to my projects in future or is useful to my projects now, gets put into this database. And maybe you've had that feeling before, if you've seen a tool that looks interesting and you but you just can't remember what it was, or you thought they'd be a good tool for a job and you've forgotten the name. That's why I manage this database. Whenever I do a project, I can go and review my software and resources database and think this would be a good tool for this job. Notes and ideas, I've kind of explained it. It's nothing complicated. It's literally just a note-taking system, but it integrates with all of my different databases, which gets very interesting. And then finally, locations database. This is another interesting one that I also developed myself, is I note down, so when I used to scroll through Instagram, I would see reels and they're showing these amazing travel destinations, often in these weird places you've never heard of. I would screenshot them and I would tag them into different locations. So I now have like a travel bucket list that is there as well. And I also have the key locations that I spend time in: London, Georgia, Portugal, Colombia, and they're marked down as locations. I keep track of my favorite restaurants there, my favorite places to shop at, good places to live at, recommendations of places nearby people gave me to visit. It's just a database of each different location. And if you saw my previous video on talking about traveling around different locations, I also write out the positives and negatives of each location and the strengths of each location, so that I make sure when I am in that specific location, I spend time doing tasks that align with what that location has to offer. A lot of time saying location just then. But yeah, that is the purpose of that database. And then on my homepage, I put down my active locations so that I can easily navigate through to it, find a good restaurant, find contacts that I have in that particular location, whatever it is. Next up, I have a people database. This is probably the least managed database that I have, I'll be completely honest. It's kind of too much work to manage. The reason for this database is to keep track of contacts, where kind of what they're doing. Like I can add their kind of LinkedIn profile there and pull data in automatically. Just like interesting people that I kind of follow. It can even be like influencers that like I'm interested in consuming the content they put out, putting links to all of their social media profiles. But the other thing that I do, which was a recommendation that I was given by someone, is to keep track of the people that you kind of work with and spend time with. Whenever they kind of mess up on something, you can keep evidence. I mean, this can get pretty dark. I haven't actually had to use it yet, but it's always good to have. You can kind of keep evidence on that. And let's just say if you ever needed to just kind of not get your way in something, but just remind someone of something. If there was like a situation that was getting a little bit sticky in business, it's good to have kind of like active monitoring and evidence and kind of like a history of like the people around you. I don't mean like doing this on like your best friends or anything like that. I mostly mean about people that you're working with. For example, I've had situations with business partners in the past where like things got a little bit I just built this habit of keeping out tracking information on other people, but you can also do it for like I do it for using people's skill sets. So if I ever think I need to call someone who's like really good on Instagram, like I can maintain a database of people, their specific skill sets and the specific services that they offer. Like freelancers, for example, would also like fall into the people database. People in a particular location, although I generally do that through like my phone book. Yeah, this is, I hope that made sense. I literally recorded a video this morning for about an hour and even I was getting lost. So yeah, I hope that this gives like an overview of the system. Now you kind of see like the moving parts of the system, and it sounds very complex, but most of this is actually completely automated, and you just spend time in daily, weekly, and monthly tracking, and all of this is handled within, you've built out processes to handle all of this stuff. This is kind of just giving you a layout of the database and how everything works and actually falls together. But hopefully this has given you an impression, even just of this little diagram that I put together in 5 minutes, of anyone who is working without a system such as this is just playing at a disadvantage, like you genuinely are. I think there's kind of no two ways about it. Your brain is not designed to... Your brain, for one, is not designed to retain large amounts of information. The maximum amount of information you can retain in short-term memory is about 7 pieces of information, at which point you will start to cause yourself stress. You'll be stressing out your system when your brain is trying to retain more than that, and you feel stressed, which has all types of negative health benefits, not benefits, all types of negative health implications. But number two, like the brain just can't operate in a way like this. Like this is something that is designed to be done by computers. And like I said at the very start, the weakest point in this system, unfortunately, is myself down here at the bottom here. I need to make sure that I'm the one who completes the tasks, who does the habits and does the daily tracking, does the weekly tracking, does the monthly tracking, does the quarterly stuff. Once I've kind of laid out where I want to be and laid out my goals and my projects that are going to get me there, it's literally just a case of ruthless execution around this area. This is where all of my time is really spent in this little space down here. The rest of it is kind of like handled by itself. But yeah, I hope that this gave a good overview. And yeah, I'm excited to start putting this video series together.